My name is Susan. My husband, Kevin, and I have been married for 20 years. Our son, Brian, entered college this year and has moved out. Life with just me and Kevin is going fairly well. Kevin has started a baseball team with his colleagues, and he spends his weekends practicing from morning till evening. I work part-time and have a fulfilling time attending yoga classes with my friends. I think we're a typical couple of our age. One day, I received a message from Emma, a friend I made at yoga.
I'm at the station right now, but isn't this your husband?
Reluctantly, I opened the photo to see Kevin walking hand in hand with another woman. My heart raced. Kevin is cheating. He said he was going out to practice for a game today, but could that have been a lie?
What do you want to do? Should I come over?
No, it's okay. I'll talk to Kevin. Asked by Emma, I replied after some hesitation. What should I do? I'm scared to ask Kevin. What if he really is cheating? Divorce at this age. I felt anxious. If I pretend I don't know, can I continue to live a peaceful life as before? As I continued to worry and came back to my senses, it was already 7 p.m. at night.
What's wrong? You didn't even turn on the lights.
When Kevin came home, he turned on the living room light and said that with a look of amazement. Oh, sorry. I was asleep. I dodged the question, and Kevin started laughing as he began washing his practice clothes. Seeing this, I thought he must have gone to baseball practice. Wondering if the photo from earlier was a mistake, I asked him, "Did you stop anywhere else today besides baseball practice?"
Not really. I didn't go anywhere.
I thought you might have gone to buy those new shoes you wanted.
Well, I haven't gotten around to buying them yet.
That's where the conversation ended. Kevin seemed normal as always. I decided to think that it must have been someone else in the photo. Still, I had my doubts about him when he came home late from overtime or when he had to stay overnight on a sudden business trip. Bad events do tend to follow one another. One day, I was stopping by the supermarket on my way home from work. At that moment, I got a call from my brother, Thomas. It had been years since I last talked to Thomas on the phone. He told me that our father, George, was not in good health.
He suddenly collapsed at work, was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, and after some thorough tests, the doctors said he wouldn't have much longer.
My mother passed away several years ago. After she died, my father lived alone, so my brother, Thomas, and his wife offered to move in with him, but he declined and has been living happily on his own. Just last week, he sounded fine when we talked on the phone, so I was very surprised. "I'll come to visit soon," I said, and then hung up the phone with Thomas. That evening, when Kevin came home from work, I told him about my father, and he looked sad.
Oh, really, George? Don't worry about the house. Just go and see him.
Kevin said kindly. Encouraged by Kevin, I went to see my father the next day.
Suddenly, I got dizzy and couldn't get up. You can't be aging. Sorry to worry you.
He said weakly, unlike his usual chatty self.
Did something happen? Did you have a fight with Kevin?
I was flustered when he asked, but he just chuckled and said,
You're like your mother, holding things in. We don't know what the future holds, so live as you feel. Parents are happiest when they see their children's smiles.
His words made me realize something important. I wanted to talk more with my father, but he said he was tired, so I decided to leave that day. It was only about 15 minutes, and thinking about how weak his body has become made me start to cry. While waiting for my tears to stop on a sofa near my father's hospital room, a man in a white lab coat sat next to me and started talking.
Are you here to visit George? I'm his doctor.
I quickly wiped away my tears.
It's okay. You must be surprised by all this suddenly. Do you have any questions?
I asked him various questions about my father's condition and what to expect in the future. He explained everything politely. He stayed with me until a nurse came to call him away, which was very calming. Then, when I got home, I called Emma, who had sent me the photo, to talk it over.
I was worried I might have overstepped by sending that. I'm sorry if it caused you pain.
No, I'm glad you told me. I'm finally ready to confront Kevin about his affair, but I have no idea what to do next. As I spoke honestly, Emma laughed and said,
Actually, my husband is a lawyer. I'll ask him about it.
I felt relieved. Emma quickly told me about a private investigator and even offered to go with me if I felt anxious. During this time, I was busy visiting my father and working part-time. At the same time, Kevin's work seemed to get busier with more overtime and business trips. I had grown suspicious of Kevin and was anxiously awaiting the investigation results. 2 weeks later, I went to the private investigator's office.
Without doubt, the cheating is true.
He told me reluctantly. I was able to accept the reality without feeling anxious. In fact, I felt a sense of relief and calm. They showed me some of the numerous photos and explained his activities over the past 2 weeks. When I listened to the audio recordings, it was awful. Turns out, baseball practice was only once a week. It was only for 2 hours in the morning, and the other employees would head home to their families right after. Kevin was spending all the other time with his mistress, sometimes waiting at a cafe near the practice field for him to arrive. He had even gone to the trouble of washing his practice clothes. All the overtime and business trips were lies. It was all time spent with his mistress. The most shocking thing was what Kevin had told his mistress.
My wife's father, George, is in poor health. So as soon as we get the inheritance, I'm going to divorce her. He probably won't last another month, so let's reserve an apartment downtown now.
His recent business was due to him starting preparations for a new home, and he had even reserved furniture and appliances. There was also a plan for a trip before the wedding next month, and I felt dizzy hearing about it. The thought of Kevin waiting for my father to pass away deeply hurt me. It was enough to lose any affection. I didn't feel sad, just a strong desire to get a divorce as soon as possible. I paid a considerable amount to the private investigator to take all the data, and just in case, I had Emma keep it at her place. Then Emma introduced me to a lawyer she knew. I had spent all my money on the investigative fees, and I was concerned that touching our joint finances could negatively impact the divorce proceedings. In the end, swallowing my pride, I consulted my brother, Thomas.
Why didn't you talk to me sooner?
Thomas scolded me, but was willing to lend me the money for the lawyer's fees. After meeting with the lawyer and discussing the possibility of working as an employee or full-time at my part-time jobs, they offered me a contract position. Financially, I could see a way forward. Now, how should I go about initiating the divorce? One midnight, I got a call from my brother, Thomas.
Father has passed away.
I woke Kevin up, and we both headed to the hospital. Kevin briefly visited my father, greeted Thomas and his wife, and said,
Take your time to say goodbye.
then he left alone to go home early. From there, we were busy with the funeral, greeting relatives, and I hardly had time to grieve. All of us, Thomas and his wife and I, were exhausted. Kevin, as usual, didn't help at all. Moreover, even though my father had just passed away, he went off to play baseball. Thomas and his wife were appalled, but knowing my firm intention to divorce, they thankfully didn't say anything. I had so much to do that the divorce got postponed. Things really started moving half a year later. Finally, the paperwork related to my father was completed, and the amount of the inheritance was confirmed.
So, has George's inheritance come through yet?
It's supposed to be transferred tomorrow, but why do you ask?
Well, since George was a big company executive, I was wondering how much there would be.
I heard it's about $700,000. Kevin looked surprised.
That much? George really saved up, didn't he?
The lawyer said everything is ready and it will be transferred tomorrow. So how about we go out for something nice to eat? I emphasized that it would be transferred the next day and said it with a smile. The next day, after Kevin left for work, I placed the banking card on the desk before I went to work. When I returned from work, as expected, the banking card was gone, and there was a filled-out divorce form left in its place. I was surprised things had gone so smoothly. I headed to my lawyer's office to explain the situation. After that, I didn't return home, but went to my parents' house instead. Most of my belongings had already been moved. The household items at the home were shared, and what to do with them would be decided later. Kevin and his mistress would probably live there, but since the divorce papers were already submitted, I had no intention of contacting Kevin. 3 days later, Kevin called me.
What the hell is going on? There's no money in the account. Where did the inheritance go? And where are you?
I deliberately matched his tone and said, the inheritance is mine, right? Why would you use it? It seemed Kevin had returned home. I need to contact my lawyer right away.
Why isn't there $700,000 in your account?
Did you take my banking card? I had it out because I was planning to change the account for my company's salary deposits. I had intended to use the missing banking card.
Don't joke around. We're married, so it's shared property. Hand it over to me.
Kevin shouted over the phone. The inheritance is personal property, not shared. And since the divorce papers are already submitted, we're not married anymore. Don't contact me again. You can live with your mistress at the house since I won't be returning. Bye. Then I heard Kevin gasp for air, and I hung up the phone unilaterally. I immediately informed the lawyer's office about Kevin's location. Despite numerous calls from Kevin, I ignored them all. After a year of struggle, I never thought I could feel so at peace. When I checked my phone, there were an incredible number of missed calls and messages from Kevin. I was surprised, and when I opened the messages, there were many complaints.
What's this about alimony? If you knew about the affair, you should have just said so.
Then there were messages of apology.
Sorry, it was my fault. I want to talk things over properly once.
I didn't reply and just left my phone behind as I headed to work. In my bag was a new cell phone. It's the one I would be using from now on.
The other party insists on meeting you.
The lawyer said after a while, and a direct confrontation was arranged. I didn't want a meeting in a secluded place, so I chose the location myself. Kevin and his mistress arrived on time. It had been about a month since we last met, and he looked tired. It was my first time meeting the mistress in person. She was a pretty young woman dressed casually. Her name is Nancy. She is 26 and works at a pastry shop. I learned from the investigation. Kevin seemed confused. My lawyer and I explained everything with a wry smile. The inheritance was left to me by my father, and you have no right to it. Alimony is due because the divorce is a result of your infidelity, which has caused me pain.
It's not because of the affair. It's a difference of personalities. Besides, it wasn't you who initiated the divorce. It was me. So the affair is irrelevant, right?
I didn't think you could be so out of touch with common sense. A person at fault cannot initiate a divorce. It's not about who says it first you cheated, so the fault is yours. Also, I'll be seeking alimony from Nancy as well.
What? Why me?
Then Nancy started shouting, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the restaurant. The other customers turned their attention to our table, wondering what was happening. However, the lawyer just smiled and said,
It's okay. We know where she works.
Kevin turned pale.
You know, Nancy is actually quite assertive. When we were having an affair, she seemed so nice. Always smiling when we were together, and she would cry when it was time for me to leave.
Kevin suddenly started making excuses, leaving us at a loss for how to react.
Nancy's cooking isn't good, and she's always so demanding. It used to be cute, but it's quite a hassle now that we're married.
Kevin started complaining about her, even though they had been married for only about a month.
I realized something. I'm always comparing her with you. You were good at housework, a great cook, and always waiting for me to come home. Can we start over?
I was just appalled at Kevin's words. The lawyer was speechless. Of course not. I can't trust anything you say,
I want to start over.
Kevin repeated. Remember, from the time you said my father wasn't going to last much longer until he passed about a month later, you never visited him once. You were having an affair even when I was going through a really hard time. After my father passed, all you cared about was the inheritance, right? There were several times when the drawer with the banking card was tampered with. You must have been planning to take it and leave the completed divorce papers once the inheritance came through, right? As I continued, Kevin started to tremble. You're probably thinking now that if you remarry me, you won't have to pay alimony, aren't you? Then Kevin fell silent. It looks like I hit the mark. This is just ridiculous. If there's nothing more to discuss, I'm leaving.
You mean the most to me. Please, let's start over.
Kevin pleaded, starting to cry. Stop it. It's embarrassing. You're newlyweds. You should talk it out with each other.
Actually, she's cheating on me. It seems she married me for my money.
Kevin broke down and cried. Leaving the crying Kevin behind, my lawyer and I paid the bill and left the restaurant. Afterward, to avoid Kevin and his new wife making a fuss about not paying alimony, I called Kevin's parents for consult them. Living far away and having had little contact with them except for thanking them for attending my father's funeral, it had been a while since our last conversation. It then came to light that Kevin had not informed his parents about either the divorce or his remarriage. His parents were shocked by this revelation. I had given up on relying on them, but the next day his father brought his own brother to Kevin's place. To Kevin, this man is his uncle. He is the complete opposite of Kevin's father, a robust and hardy man. Kevin has often complained about how difficult he finds him. This uncle turned out to be a strong ally, agreeing to ensure Kevin paid the alimony. Kevin's father then apologetically informed me that Kevin would be taken back to the countryside by his uncle. Since his parents are over 80 and have no income, they promised that under their supervision, Kevin would work at a factory owned by a relative nearby and pay me the alimony. Nancy unilaterally handed Kevin the divorce papers. I reluctantly contacted her workplace. While speaking with a woman who identified herself as the manager, I learned a shocking fact. The person Nancy was accused of having an affair with was that manager's husband.
We are preparing to sue. Rest assured, we won't let her get away.
True to her word, a few months later, the alimony was deposited. When I went to Nancy's workplace to express my gratitude, she was nowhere to be seen. I was told she was now working multiple jobs to repay the alimony, and at that time she was working at a nearby construction site. Out of curiosity, I went to see, and there was Nancy without any makeup, sweating and being scolded by an older man while working. She must be under a considerable amount of debt. I think she got what she deserved for destroying someone's family. My son, Brian, was very surprised when I reported the divorce.
It's your life, Mom. You should do what you want.
However, Brian spoke kindly, which reassured me. I still want to cherish each day moving forward.